All right, so now we're going to learn about the dangers of using an average. So I've created two Excel files, and one is the observations, 30 observations of people's height, and the other is 30 observations of people's wealth. And so if we go to our height file, we have a series of 30 people. We've measured their height. We can look at what the average, what the high, what the low. So let's go ahead and look at what the high or maximum. If you're using Excel, they use max. We can take all the observations and we get a max height of 79 inches, which is, that's about what, 6'5", 6'7", and we get a minimum of, what would that be, 5'4". So we can take the average of all of these and we are going to get a somewhat descriptive piece of information. We can say the average height of these 30 individuals is 70 inches. Now, with averages, you always have to be careful what you are looking at. Now, we can also look at our net worth. We have our net worth, and we have, this is in thousands, so we have people's net worths ranging from 25,000, and we put in their net worths. There's a few millionaires in there. And this can be something like 401k balance or investment balance or entire liquid net worth. And so we can do the same. We can do the max and look at our observations. And so we have the richest person was worth 2.4 million, and the minimum is it's going to be 1,000. Now, and we get our average, so we can take an average. Yep, all the observations. Whoops. Take the average of all observations. From 30 to 1. And we get an average of 234,000. Now what the danger comes in is, let's assume that we add the tallest person in the world to our data set or the richest person in the world to our data set, and let's see what happens and why it's dangerous when we use averages. Now among these averages, we can say the average person is worth about $234,000, and we have people ranging from 2 million to 1,000. That number is somewhat useful. On height, we can say the average person is 70 inches. The range is, because the range is from 64 to 79. Now, what typically when you hear someone say average, they don't say what the high and low was, and that is a very important piece of information. Because let's assume that we had the tallest person, and let's just assume the tallest person alive right now is 8 feet tall. And so 8 feet would be 96 inches, and we end up with a high of 96. So we're gonna add our one observation to our average, and we're gonna see what happens to the average. So we have the average without the tallest, and now we have the average with the tallest. Now what did our average do? Our average went from 70.9 inches to 70. Is this right? Let me make sure. To G32. Yeah. So we just added the tallest person in the world to our data, and what did it do to our average? Well, it went up, but not by very much. Because we have so many observations, and the data is pretty much in a small range. It ranges, this doesn't, there can be somebody taller than 8 feet, maybe 9 feet, but the reality is you're not going to have somebody that's 100 feet tall or 1,000 feet tall. So when we use something like average with height, we can say, we can use average when we're describing heights of a group of people. Now what happens when we add the richest person to our data set? Now currently I think the richest person in the world is probably Jeff Bezos. It changes with Amazon stock, but let's just assume that they're worth $100 billion, the richest person in the world. So that would be, let me make sure that's a billion. Yeah, because we're in thousands. And so, whoops, our average was already taking into account that, so let's take out the richest person. So our average is 234 without the richest person in the world. Now when we add the richest person in the world, what happens to our average? Well, we already saw it. Our average goes to 3.2 billion. So how useful is it to use an average when you're describing something like net worth, or maybe income, or anything that's doesn't follow what would be a normal distribution? Our data here would follow a normal distribution around a central mean, whereas our net worth, our data set is highly skewed due to one observation. Now in this case, what happened to our average height? It went up by a little bit. We added the tallest person in the world to our sample of 30 people, and our average height only went up by a small fraction. What happened to our average net worth when we added the richest person in the world to our sample? Well, it went up by 100-fold, over 100-fold. So anytime you hear someone using average to describe something that either A, does not follow a normal distribution, or has very skewed observations, what they are, they're most likely either giving you bad information or trying to manipulate you. So things like net worth, when you hear average net worth, average household income, individual income, things like that, where a few data points can highly skew the data, you should not be using an average. Or if you hear the word average, you want to take a look at the data and make sure that one observation or a small cluster of observations are not completely impacting the final outcome.